All right, hello, welcome back. Again, this is going to be the Lamp Bible Study, and we left off in Exodus 20, so we'll be going through Exodus 21. Again, I am reading a NIV version. This is the Collegiate Bible, and just for some backstory, Moses just received the Ten Commandments. He went up on the mountain to speak with God, and God handed him the Ten Commandments. And God's presence was with all of Israel. He was there on the mountain, and so all the people had to consecrate themselves, and because the whole area was holy. So we're going to continue on and to Exodus 21. These are the laws you are to set before them. Hebrew servants. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free, without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone, but if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. Okay, so what we're seeing is during that time, you could purchase people as either slaves or a form of servitude. So not necessarily a slave, but a servitude. So they would be in service to you, whether it's tending your field or doing collections for you, whatever the case may be, a cook even. It would be a person that would be obligated in servitude, and that you would be basically having them, taking care of them as well for a certain amount of time. And people did, that did happen to people during that time. There were poor and wealthy people still during, even all the way in the past. I know it's amazing because we have issues today where we have the different groups, subgroups, etc. But we have different classes throughout the world. We still have the poor and the rich. In some countries, they want to claim that there's the middle class. I don't know because what I think of today, I still believe that really there's two classes, because there's the class that they get up in the morning and they don't have to think about anything. They don't have to think about money. They don't have to think about a purpose. They don't literally have to think about anything. Anything that they want or think that they need, they can have at any time. They can wake up in the middle of the night and say, I want to go X, and they get to go X, and everybody else is on. They have to, work for them or be on the job and ready at the moment's whim. Then you have the rest of the people who do things and they believe they're a part of that other class, but really they're still part of the other people who do have to worry about a dime, who do have to work consistently or do something to make a living or do something to get what they want. So I still believe to this day there is a separation. I don't, there in our society, there's, they have the worker, the middle class, and then the high class. But to me, it's really, it's still just two. What does that say to you? Just from those first few verses, what does that speak to you? What do you get? What information do you get from this? But if the servant declares, I love my master and my wife and children and do not want to go free, then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or the doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be his servant for life. So this is a servant choosing to be a part of a family, or part of a family, not just be in servitude, but actually being part of that family as a servitude, but being a part of the family. That happened. You could get into a beneficial relationship with another person or another group, and you may decide, hey, this is what you want to do. This is fine. You're good with it. You know, you're being treated nicely. They're being treated nicely. So it was more of a just, you didn't really have to worry about what where your next job or where your next things, seekness is going to be, where you have to seek for work or food or whatever. So and this is for the rest of their life. So if a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as manservants do. If she does not please the master who has selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has broken faith with her. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. If he marries another woman, he must not deprive the first one of her food, clothing, and marital rights. If he does not provide her with these three things, she is to go free without any payment of money. So a little bit different rules for the women, but at the same time, they still were. Everybody was still supposed to be taken care of, even the servants. Personal injuries. Anyone who strikes a man and kills him shall surely be put to death. However, if he does not do it intentionally, but God lets it happen, he is to flee to a place I will designate. But if a man schemes and kills another man deliberately, take him away from my altar and put him to death. Anyone who attacks his father or his mother must be put to death. Anyone who kidnaps another and either sells him or still has him when he is caught must be put to death. Anyone who curses his father or mother must be put to death. If men quarrel and one hits the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die but is confined to bed, the one who struck the blow will not be held responsible if the other gets up and walks around outside with his staff. However, he must pay the injured man for the loss of his time and see that he is completely healed. So, just to go back on these, what we're getting into is the law. And this is in the Old Testament. And the law is here because it is to show what happens when you sin. Like, when you sin and you do something, there has to be equal payment. Well, all this is before Jesus. We need Jesus because the law, none of us can live up to, unfortunately, because we're man. Look at Adam and Eve. They were created, and unfortunately they sinned. So that is man. We've been given a right to have our own thoughts and our own decision. Therefore, we also are able to learn in wisdom and then choose whether or not we're going to do something sinful or not. And unfortunately for man, none of us are sinless. We all sin. The only person who is sinless is Jesus. Jesus, as God came down as man and was sinless for his life and is always sinless. So this is telling us what literally things had to be done for the law. So you killed somebody, you had to die. If you hurt somebody, you had to be hurt, or you had to pay a repercussion. If you cursed your mother or father, you had to be put to death. And so this is because this is to hold a moral responsibility for all of this nation, because this nation, Israel, had grown. It went from a group of 30 to 50 people that went down to Egypt to now hundreds of thousands, 1 million plus people. And so in order for the people to continually get along, these laws had to be placed so people could look at themselves. The law is also a reflection. It's a reflection at us. literally is a mirror to each and every one of us. So don't think of it as something to get down on, like as in something that is to keep in your mind, to be like, dang, we're just sinful creatures, or sinful human beings, and we should just constantly be punished. That is not the case. That is why we have Jesus. That is why God gave us grace. And we'll see throughout here that God is merciful. He provides grace even to his people. Even every single time that they sin, there's always hope. There's always that grace. There's always a way. So the next verse is, if a man beats his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies as a direct result, he must be punished. But he is not to be punished if the slave gets up after a day or two, since the slave is his property. If men who are fighting hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. So once again, I'm going to go back and read it because that hits us. That hits me. How does it feel to you? What does it tell you? Again, this is dealing with the law. This is dealing with the facts. This is dealing with the truth. In order to be holy, this is the law. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. So this is the reason why, to me, this tells me this is exactly the reason why God had to send Jesus. Because we cannot live as human beings under the law like this, because it's impossible. We have too many thoughts and feelings and things that we do. We don't see things eye for eye. And so the understanding here is that this is to let us know, it's a reflection on ourselves, that we need a leader. We need the forever king. We need a savior. And it reminds me of just what happens through life. I hear it time and time again. One thing that I hear is that I never really agreed with is people using the word karma. When they see something bad happen, they believe that something bad will happen to that person, as it's going to come around back to them, and that's their karma. I do not agree with it. Now, the Bible does state, you reap what you sow, and again, that's probably wrong. But so don't take that for it. We'll read more in here. I can't remember this precise wording, but it's not the same. You can have somebody who goes through life and does horrendous things and had a fantastic life on earth. Well, we have to understand that their reward is here. Their reward for themselves and how they were is here. They got the yacht, they got the wealth, or they got the power, or they were able to harm other people. And if they don't believe, especially if they don't believe, that's it. God, this is their grace, because they're going to be forever in hell. There's no way around it. And so we have to look at it as not the scales are not the same, and we need the scales not to be the same, because for what we do as humans, we do sin, but God sent his son, and because that, we are forgiven of our sins. So he goes above and beyond. Not only that, but when we trust and believe in Jesus, and we believe in Jesus, we will be in heaven forever. So even though this time on earth is very short. Very, very short. In the blink of an eye for God. Believing in Jesus as our Savior, that gets us an eternal reward. So if a man hits a manservant or maidservant in the eye and destroys it, he must let the servant go free to compensate for the eye. And if he knocks out the tooth or a manservant or maidservant of a manservant or maidservant, he must let the servant go free to compensate for the tooth. If a bull gores a man or a woman to death, the bull must be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten, but the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had the habit of goring, and the owner has been warned but has not kept it pinned up, and it kills a man or woman, the bull must be stoned, and the owner also must be put to death. However, if payment is demanded of him, he may redeem his life by paying whatever is demanded. This law also applies if the bull gores a son or daughter. If the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull must be stoned. If a man uncovers a pit or digs one, and fails to cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit must pay for the loss. He must pay its owner, and the dead animal will be his. If a man's bull injures the bull of another and it dies, they are to sell the live one and divide both the money and the dead animal equally. However, if it was known that the bull had the habit of goring, yet the owner did not keep it pinned up, the owner must pay animal for animal, and the dead animal will be his. Protection of property. If a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he must pay back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. If a thief is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed, but if it happens after sunrise, he is guilty of bloodshed. So, and then it goes on, but I just want to pause for a second because these are the people of Israel, and these are God's holy people, but yet he's having to give laws for things that if we were to follow completely in holiness and under God's command, we wouldn't need any of this. We're now talking about a thief, so, and he's not just talking about foreigners that come into, the Israel. He's talking about the group as a whole. So it just goes to show you that we are human. And again, it goes back to a reflection. Things can happen. You think a little minor thing, well, I only ate 1 grape at the store. I still paid for the whole bushel. It's difficult to say, but a sin is a sin. You know what I mean? Like it's all the same level. There is no levels to sin. So I do want to make that clear. If you believe in levels to sin, like explain that. If you believe somehow there's levels, every time I've read the Bible, I have never seen any levels of sin. There's one unforgivable sin, which is not believing in Jesus, not believing Jesus is the Savior. But when it comes to levels of sin, that's like, for me, it's like saying that there's levels of Satan, like there's levels of the devil. And that would not be correct because with the devil, there's complete chaos. So I'm just not convinced. but definitely we'll continue. So a thief must certainly make restitution, but if he has nothing, he must be sold to pay for his theft. So there you go. He has to sell himself to pay for it. So going into servitude. If the stolen animal is found alive in his possession, whether ox or donkey or sheep, he must pay back double. If a man grazes his livestock in a field or vineyard and lets them stray and they graze in another man's field, he must make restitution from the best of his own field or vineyard. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice if you accidentally did something and you had to pay, or someone did something to you and they paid with the best of the best. They gave you the best, whatever it is, snack. I mean, just anything that you can think of. I don't see that happening today, unfortunately. The Bible's full of morals and standards, but yet we as humans, that's why we need the Savior. That's why we need Jesus. If a fire breaks out and spreads into thorn bushes so that it burns shocks of grain or standing grain or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. If a man gives his neighbor silver or goods for safekeeping and they are stolen from the neighbor's house, the thief, if he is caught, must pay back double. But if the thief is not found, the owner of the house must appear before the judges to determine whether he has laid his hands on the other man's property. In all cases of illegal possession of an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, or any other lost property about which somebody says, "This is mine," both parties are to bring their cases before the judges. The one whom the judges declare guilty must pay back double to his neighbor. So in this time, they did start the time of the judges, or will be starting the time of the judges, and the judges are to go to God. They're not just to assume. These are men that were following to the way, the truth, and they would go to God to seek answers. And so these people would be, so these were holy men that were going to become the judges. If a man gives a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or any other animal to his neighbor for safekeeping and it dies or is injured or is taken away while no one is looking, the issue between them will be settled by the taking of an oath before the Lord that the neighbor did not lay hands on the other person's property. The owner is to accept this, and no restitution is required. But if the animal was stolen from the neighbor, he must make restitution to the owner. So that's bringing in that God-fearing. I would not want to directly say that I didn't do something, knowing in the back of my mind or knowing truthfully that I did, directly to God. Cue the earth opening up. Cue the lightning bolt. Cue the tidal wave. Cue the lion. So I'm just saying. Okay. So let's see here. But if the animal was stolen from the neighbor, he must make restitution to the owner. If it was torn to pieces by a wild animal, he shall bring in the remains as evidence, and he will not be required to pay for the torn animal. If a man borrows an animal from his neighbor and it is injured or dies while the owner is not present, he must make restitution. But if the owner is with the animal, the borrower will not have to pay if the animal was hired. The money paid for the hire covers the loss. Social responsibility. If a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price, and she shall be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay the bride price for virgins. Let me just pause here. What we just read, what does that tell you? How does that speak to you? Are there things in your life that you've seen? I can tell you now, this does not happen today. That I know of. It's sad. It's talking about a man seducing a virgin and then sleeps with her. And had no intention of, maybe even didn't even have an intention of marrying her. And so he's got to pay a price. And it's the bride price. And he's also supposed to request for the virgin who's no longer a virgin to be his wife. He's to take that responsibility now. So he may have thought with some other part of his body, the flesh, may have thought with the flesh, but now he's got to take responsibility. This brings up, just this verse 16 and 17 just bring up a lot. What does it tell you? How do you feel about what we just read? Do not allow a sorceress to live. Anyone who has sexual relations with an animal must be put to death. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord must be destroyed. Do not mistreat an alien or oppress him, for you were aliens in Egypt. Wow, we just read some very powerful statements. So, again, back then, and even, going through the truth, the first one, do not allow sorcerers to live. So God made it well known that, we don't talk to, it's not recommended to talk to spirits and things and act like we have power, because it's all false. We're supposed to, we're to question the spirits to see if it's from God, because if it's not from God, it's leading us down the path of destruction. It's leading us down the path of sin. Sexual relations with the animal. Of course, he was wanting people to populate the earth. His people, Israel, to populate the earth. Whoever sacrificed to any other god, time and time again, they just came from Egypt. Egypt had gods. They had many gods. Even Pharaoh considered himself a god. So they're dealing with God, the one living true God. So why would you don't create another idol or another god in front of God? Do not mistreat an alien or oppress him, for you are aliens in Egypt. This goes even to this day. Don't, just because someone's a foreign, we're not to treat them as, mistreat them. And even back then, because you never know, there were so many people who in the Bible who were not in Israel or not the Hebrew, but were huge major players in the Bible. And so this tells us that right here, that we're supposed to, once again, reinforcing that love your neighbor as yourself, the second greatest commandment. So the first is love God, and then the second is love your neighbor as yourself. Do not take advantage of a widow or an orphan. If you do and they cry out to me, I will certainly hear their cry. My anger will be aroused, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives will become widows and your children fatherless. If you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not be like a moneylender. Charge him no interest. If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, return it to him by sunset, because his cloak is the only covering he has for his body. What else will he sleep in? When he cries out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. So just that, even today, when you do something from your heart or from the Holy Spirit directing you to do something, do it. And even in everything, we're supposed to, if we lend something or give something, we're not supposed to really look for an award for that. We're not supposed to shout from the mountaintops, I donated to somebody, or I was nice to somebody. That is how our day-to-day is supposed to be. That is what it was supposed to be, loving each other, because one day it may happen, you may fall down and hurt yourself, and somebody may be there to help you out, or, something may have happened to you, or you may even be down one day and somebody just gives you a smile. A smile can make all the difference. Do not blaspheme God or curse the ruler of your people. Do not hold back offerings from your granaries or your vats. You must give me the firstborn of your sons. Do the same with your cattle and your sheep. Let them stay with their mothers for 7 days, but give them to me on the 8th. You are to be my holy people, so do not eat the meat of an animal torn by wild beasts. Throw it to the dogs. So the firstborn going to God, that was about the firstborn being consecrated and becoming part of little worship services for the people. So everybody was to, and Israel was to do that. So that way they could continue having people who are leading worship, singing, praising, helping with duties. So that was everything here is for a purpose. Laws of justice and mercy. Do not spread false reports. Do not help a wicked man by being a malicious witness. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. When you give testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd, and do not show favoritism to a poor man in his lawsuit. That's that just says a lot. It's more. This is in depth. This is a lot. Even things that were used in the past, even through today and in the future. We're not supposed to lie and pervert justice. We're supposed to be truthful or helping each other. And was the reason for the judges. So that way they could collect all the information together, all the facts, and make a decision, a just decision. If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, be sure to take it back to him. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure you help him with it. So again, if you see a donkey of someone who hates you, you're supposed to still help out. Even that person that hates you. What does that tell you? What does that say to you? What does that speak to you? Do not deny justice to your poor people in their lawsuits. Have nothing to do with a false charge, and do not put an innocent or honest person to death, for I will not acquit the guilty. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds those who see and twists the words of the righteous. Do not oppress an alien. You yourself know how it feels to be aliens, because you were aliens in Egypt. Sabbath laws. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops, but during the 7th year let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among you, your people, may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what they leave. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days do your work, but on the 7th day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and the slave born in your household and the alien as well may be refreshed. Be careful to do everything I have said to you. Do not invoke the names of other gods. Do not let them be heard on your lips. The 3 annual festivals. 3 times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Celebrate the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days. Eat bread made without yeast, as I commanded you. Do this at the appointed time in the month of Abib. It's that one of those months. For in that month you came out of Egypt. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Celebrate the feast of harvest with the first fruits of the crops you sow in your field. Celebrate the feast of ingathering at the end of the year when you gather in your crops from the field. 3 times a year, all the men are to appear before the sovereign Lord. Do not offer the blood of a sacrifice to me along with anything containing yeast. The fat of my festival offerings must not be kept until morning. Bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. So all of this is because God's giving them plenty, and you give back. This is already God, so you're just giving back what God has given you. And God's going to do more than that. He's going to provide you still with the surplus. This is telling us how we are to act in thanksgiving and giving and wanting to give. God's angel to prepare the way. See, I am sending an angel ahead of you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion, since my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. Do not bow down before their gods or worship them or follow their practices. You must demolish them and break their sacred stones to pieces. Worship the Lord your God, and his blessing will be on your food and water. I will take away sickness from among you, and none will miscarry or be barren in your land. I will give you a full lifespan. So again, I'm going to pause here for just a moment, because some scholars and some people think that, believe that when in this, especially verse 20, and 21, they believe the angel's actually Jesus. They believe it's Jesus before he's made flesh. And so, because it says, since my name is in him, name being God, being Jehovah, Elohim, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but those are some people, some scholars and people believe that. I'm not quite sure, reading it. To me, reading it again does help. What do you think? What do you believe? Does it bring any thoughts or feelings or guidance to you? I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion every nation you encounter. I will make all your enemies turn their backs and run. I will send the hornet ahead of you to drive the Hivites, Canaanites, and Hittites out of your way. But I will not drive them out in a single year, because the land would become desolate and the wild animals too numerous for you. Little by little, I will drive them out before you till you have increased enough to take possession of the land. I will establish your borders from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the desert to the river. I will hand over to you the people who live in the land, and you will drive them out before you. Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. Do not let them live in your land, or they will cause you to sin against me, because the worship of their gods will certainly be a snare to you. Okay, so right here, he's giving them directives for when they go into the promised land and how it's going to be done. And so, unfortunately, they're not going to follow all of these instructions. We'll find out more about that later on. But the instructions are good. There's a reason for it. And it's also letting us know that God always has something for us. God is always preparing the way for us. He's always making sure that we are going to be set and we're going to be successful. And he's building a place for us. He's going to establish us forever. Forever. The covenant confirmed. Then he said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. You are to worship at a distance, but Moses alone is to approach the Lord. The others must not come near, and the people may not come up with him." When Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, they responded with one voice, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men And they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in bowls, and the other half he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey." Moses then took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words." Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of sapphire, clear as the sky itself. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of the Israelites. They saw God and they ate and drank. Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. They were able to see God along with Moses and Aaron. They were able to be in God's presence. Not only that, but they didn't die. And that just goes to show you the grace and mercy and love that the Lord has for us. And they ate and drank in his presence. I can't wait. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commands I have written for their instruction." Then Moses set out with Joshua, his aide, and Moses went up on the mountain of God. He said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone involved in a dispute can go to them." When Moses went up on the mountain, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the seventh day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went on up the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. That's amazing. He stayed with God for 40 days and 40 nights. God showed right there another miracle. Because it doesn't specify if Moses had food and water. It just said Moses went up and stayed with God for 40 days and 40 nights. That shows you another miracle. That shows you that what God is. That shows you that God is above and beyond anything that we can imagine. He can sustain us. He sustains us. He establishes us. What does this truth say to you? What kind of thoughts and feelings are you getting from this reading? Are you in awe that the people, the elders, including Moses and Aaron, were able to eat and drink in the presence of the Lord? Do you see that the Israel as a people saw the mountain or God's presence as a consuming fire in a cloud? A consuming fire on top of a mountain. That's amazing. How would you feel? What kind of thoughts would you feel? Because remember, when God speaks, it's like lightning. There was lightning and thunder and I'm sure just this amazing sight, as well as holiness. You're dealing with God, and almost like in a physical way. And so, what kind of feelings or thoughts does this bring up to you? I want you to take a moment, just from that part of the reading. Think of what Moses literally went from almost being killed as a child to living in the palace, so having a good life, but then killing an Egyptian and having to flee for his life. And then being, in with the people, no longer having servants, but having to actually work and do things, to becoming God's leader, God choosing him to lead his people out of Egypt, to seeing God's wondrous work by allowing God to work through him, by having that faith in God by seeing what was going on, by accepting the truth and allowing the wisdom to flow through. His brother was there, Aaron, and then the people leaving, not only them leaving, but then now Moses is the leader. How'd you feel? If you were called to do something and you became a leader of masses, what would you think? Who would you go to? Who would you turn to for wisdom? And so now these people have left Egypt, and God has fought their battle against Egypt. And so now it's a people needing a way, and God's providing that. He's providing a law. Offerings for the tabernacle. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering for me from each man whose heart prompts him to give. These are the offerings you are to receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, and hides of sea cows, acacia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the fragrant incense, and onyx stones and other gems to be mounted on the ephod and breastplate and breastpiece. Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you." So remember, the Israelites, the Hebrews, plundered the Egyptians before they left. And the Egyptians gave freely because they were in fear. They were in fear because they believed in many gods, and they were seeing the power of Israel's God. And so they were fearful, and they wanted to do whatever they could to have the people go and have the plague stop. So they were given all this, more than enough for each of these people. And so these people were now going to give back to build the tabernacle of God so that God may dwell with his people. What does that show you? Would you be ready to give what you needed to give, what you felt in your heart to give when the time comes? Then you have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle and all its furnishing exactly like the pattern I will show you. The ark. Have them make a chest of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, a cubit and a half wide, and a cubit and a half high. Overlay it with pure gold, both inside and out, and make a gold molding around it. Cast 4 gold rings for it, and fasten them to its 4 feet, with 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Insert the poles into the rings on the sides of the chest to carry it. The poles are to remain in the rings of this ark. They are not to be removed. Then put in the ark the testimony which I will give you. Make an atonement cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long, and a cubit and a half wide, and make 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover. Make 1 cherub on one end, and the second cherub on the other. Make the cherubim of one piece with the cover at the 2 ends. The cherubim are to have their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. The cherubim are to face each other, looking toward the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark, and put in the ark the testimony which I will give you. There, above the cover, between the 2 cherubim that are over the ark of the testimony, I will meet with you and give you all my commands for the Israelites. The table. Make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, a cubit wide, and a cubit and a half high. Overlay it with pure gold and make a gold molding around it. Also make around it a rim, a handbreadth wide, and put a gold molding on the rim. Make 4 gold rings for the table and fasten them to the 4 corners where the 4 legs are. The rings are to be close to the rim to hold the poles used in carrying the table. Make the poles of acacia wood, overlay them with gold, and carry the table with them. And make its plates and dishes of pure gold, as well as its pitchers and bowls for the pouring out of offerings. Put the bread of the presence on this table to be before me at all times. Okay, so what we're seeing here is basically we just read about the ark preparation, the makings of the ark, how to make it, what to make it of, what's going to be placed in the ark, how it's going to be carried. These are very important, especially as we continue reading. Just something aside to be held. This beautiful ark with the cherubim on it, and that's where the Lord will reside, and that's where he was giving information to Moses, commands. He was giving commands to Moses. Information as God was giving information as commands to Moses. And then the table that it was going to sit on. And eventually the tabernacle itself, what it will be made of. And so what does this tell you? What kind of visions or what kind of thoughts can you think of just reading about the ark and the table being made of pure gold, and the wood and the overlay of the gold, and how bright and shiny and beautiful it must have been? It's the lampstand. Make a lampstand of pure gold and hammer it out, base and shaft. Its flower-like cups, buds, and blossoms shall be of one piece with it. 6 branches are to extend from the sides of the lampstand, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. 3 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms are to be on one branch, 3 on the next branch, and the same for all 6 branches extending from the lampstand. And on the lampstand there are to be 4 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms. 1 bud shall be under the first pair of branches extending from the lampstand, a 2nd bud under the 2nd pair, and a 3rd bud under the 3rd pair, 6 branches in all. The buds and branches shall be of one piece with the lampstand, hammered out of pure gold. Then make it 7 lamps and set them up on it so that they light the space in front of it. Its wicks, trimmers, and trays are to be of pure gold. A talent of pure gold is to be used for the lampstand and all these accessories. See that you make them according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So this is information that God is giving to Moses to make these things. So not only did he give him the 10 commandments, but he also gave him how to build the ark, what to make the ark of, the table, the lampstand, the tabernacle, that we'll get into the next reading. But he's giving him this information piece by piece, direction, because what's going to represent God and his people is going to be different from all other nations. It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be even comparable, because God is a living God. He's not something made up. He's not a stone. He's not from a piece of wood. He's not from a thought. The Creator is the Creator. He is not from creation. So that's something that you do have to remember and think of, especially when we're reading through Exodus, is that these people are dealing with the Creator, and we deal with the Creator today. We have Jesus Christ, who is God, as our Savior, and He is the Creator. He is what we look for, what we look towards, what we gain wisdom for, what we seek wisdom for. So He will provide. So reading this information, what thoughts and feelings have you have came up to you, even with, again, the ark, the directions for the ark, the directions for the table, the directions for the lampstand. What does it mean? Because it all has meaning. The almond flowers, the buds, the branches, the particular a particular amount, the directions for the gold rings, so that the ark can be moved and carried. All this is in preparation. So he's already telling them that this ark is going to be moved around, so it's going to have rings so you can move it. But what else does it show? What else does it lead to? What else does it talk about? What's the significance of the bread of presence? What's the significance of the reason to use the pure gold around these items for the ark and the table and the lampstand? What is the significance and the reason for the almond flowers, the flower shapes? What is the significance and the reason for the ark? What is the significance and reason for the table? And then what is the significance and reason for the lampstand? The word is the lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. The word is the truth. So as we look back on our reading today, from chapters 20 through 25, we went through quite a bit here. 21 through 25. We went through quite a bit of information here. We went through the eye for an eye, how to treat servants in servitude, how to treat the alien, what happens if you steal or kill, etc. What happens on personal injuries, what judges are there to do, the importance of the truth, to be truthful, and not to feel sorry for somebody, even if they are poor, and not provide the truth, because everyone is to be held responsible. Protection of property. If you accidentally did something, sometimes you were even supposed to pay up to double. Your social responsibility, such as morals and standings. All this was provided to Moses and for the people, for the Israel. And then they agreed. They said, yes, we will do these things. And he was telling them, we see that he was already telling them, don't make another god. Don't make an idol. Don't make something that you're going to have sacrifices to potentially compare to me, compare to God, And so that's what he was saying to Moses. He was saying, tell the people, don't make an idol that they're going to compare to me. That's what he was telling them, to not be sinful. The laws, justice, and mercy, for having mercy. The festivals, the 3 annual festivals a year that they were to have, including sacrifices. God sending an angel to prepare their way, to place fear on the people that were currently living in those lands that Israel was about to be provided. God was giving it to them, because the people that were living there, as we'll soon find out, were not good people. They definitely blasphemed God, and they did not believe that, similar to the Egyptians, they didn't believe in God. They may have multiple gods or their own God, and we'll learn more about them later on. The covenant confirmed. The people confirmed the covenant, and they confirmed it more than once. A lot of times you hear about 3 times, and that is done in parts of the Bible as well. So what does that tell you? What kind of information or what kind of thoughts and feelings does that bring up to you? And then lastly, about offerings, how to be joyful and wanting to give and understanding when to do it and why you're doing it, because God gives you things, so you're just giving things that God gave you back to him. You're glorifying him. The reason for the ark, the reason for the table, and the reason for the lampstand. So as we in today's Bible study, there's a lot to think about, maybe even go over. What kind of things have you written down or thought about while we're going through these chapters and verses? I want to thank you very much for, again, reading with me, laughing with me, having a good time reading the Word, and I want you to continue to seek wisdom. If you have time, join me in reading together in Lamp Bible studies. Thank you very much, and God bless.